Hi, and welcome to The Bright Balloon, a podcast where I'm sharing bright ideas for your balloon business. My name is Sarah Meyer, and I'm a balloon business owner like you, and I love the creative side of what I do, but I really love the business side, which seems to be the part where most people struggle. So I'm here to help. Each week, I'm bringing you an episode full of bite-sized tips you can use to make improvements in your business. I want you to make more money, eliminate stress, and learn along with me as we grow our creative businesses together. Welcome to The Bright Balloon, presented by 17 Hats. Hello and welcome to another episode. Today I have a great interview lined up with Phillip, who is the COO of HiFloat, and they are this month's curated sponsor. So they have selected a lineup of great balloon professionals who are going to share their stories and tips and tricks with all of us. But we're going to kick it off with the COO himself. Phillip is not only the COO of HiFloat and HiShine, but he's a chemist. So he is talking about the ins and outs of what makes HiFloat work, some tips and tricks, things that I know personally I am not doing correctly. So he sheds some light on some common pitfalls that you might run into when using HiFloat and also HiShine. So I found this episode really interesting. And if you are not familiar with HiFloat, let me introduce you. They are once again this month's curated sponsor. And they carry two of my absolute favorite balloon tools that I use in almost all of my installations. And that is HiFloat and HiShine. HiFloat can make your balloons last up to 25 times longer, or if you want to give your decor a gorgeous long-lasting shine, these products are a must-have in your toolkit. So a huge thanks to HiFloat and HiShine. I literally couldn't run my business without these two products, so I'm so thrilled to have them on this month's episode. So let's take a quick break and then get into this very educational interview with Phillip, the COO of HiFloat. Welcome to the U-Glue Hotline, where we discuss great advice that sticks. Brought to you by Pro Tapes. If you have a question or some great advice to share, click the link in the show notes to call in and leave a voicemail.
Hi, Sarah. My name is Libby from Libby's Party Design in the city of Azusa in California. I want to thank you for your podcast. It seriously has changed the way I do business because of all the interviews and all the tidbits that you give us. Thank you so much. I really enjoy listening to you weekly. My tidbit is for those people who rent out the marquees from vendors like myself. I rent out my marquees to vendors, and I just recently purchased a brand new set, and they were pretty expensive. And what I do so that they're not damaged, because I have received them damaged on the first time I rented them out, is instead of using any sort of tape on the marquees, I put two column stands on each side of the marquee. So, for example, if you're going to do 2024 or 2025, put a balloon column on the 2 and then another on the 5. And that way you could start building your balloon garland on the column and not have to glue it onto the marquees, and then just tie them to the marquees with 260s. I think that'll be much better for both parties, because that way our marquees are not damaged and you're not responsible to pay the damage fee. I hope that helps. Thank you so much. Have a great day. Bye.
Pro Tapes is a leading manufacturer of specialty tape products like Pro Gaff, Pro Artist Tape, and our favorite balloon tape, U-Glue, which helps you create amazing balloon arrangements and decorations. You can save on U-Glue when you use the promo code PODCAST at checkout when you shop at our friends havinaparty.com. Welcome, Phillip, COO of HiFloat. I'm so excited to have you on. You're kicking off your curated month where you guys have assembled a lineup of guests to represent you on the podcast. But I'm so excited to have you on. Welcome.
Yeah, thanks, Sarah. I'm really excited to be here too. I'm looking forward to talking for a bit.
So why don't we just jump right in and give us an introduction? How are you connected to HiFloat? I know there's a family history there. Let's just jump in.
Sure. Yeah. So I am not a direct descendant of the founders, but I actually married into the company. My wife, Andrea, was working at the company when I met her in 1997, I think. And I was actually living in Vancouver. I was a professor at the University of British Columbia at the time. And it didn't take long after meeting her for me to move back home to Kentucky. And a couple of years later, I was working in the family business. Yeah.
Oh, interesting. What did you teach? What was your area?
Chemistry.
Oh,
So it was a
okay.
good,
Well,
it's
that
a
makes
good fit.
sense.
Yeah.
Oh,
There's a
neat.
reason I was able to get a job at HiFloat. It was
Yeah. Well, then what is the family history of HiFloat? I know it's a relatively new product, right? Like it's what, a
no,
generation old?
it's 40 years old.
Okay.
So, yeah, we're celebrating our 40th anniversary. Yeah, so it's a neat little story. So my father-in-law, my wife's father, is a chemical engineer. He grew up in Louisville, where we're based. He went to the University of Louisville and got his chemical engineering degree, and then he started working for DuPont, which is a big, it's a national company, but it's a big company here in Louisville as well. And his wife, my mother-in-law, stayed home and raised kids. When they went to school, I guess when my wife's brother was 6 and started school, she was bored. So she came and said, I want to start a balloon delivery, but a balloon shop. And it wasn't so much decor as really just singing telegrams. Even
Okay.
she'd dress up in clown suits and
Oh,
deliver
okay.
deliver a dozen helium filled balloons. And she came home pretty shortly after she started. And I should back up and say, I love my father-in-law, but bad thought on his part, because he just kind of laughed at her and patted her on the head and said, "You go do that, sweetie. I'm sure this is going to last for about a month before you're bankrupt." But shortly into the business, she came to him and said, "I feel really guilty. I'm charging people whatever it was, 15, $20 for a dozen latex balloons, and they only float for 12 hours. Can't you do something to fix that? You're a chemist, solve this problem." So he went to work in his basement, in his garage, and there was not an intent to start a company. It was not an intent to do this for anybody else. He just wanted to make a product to help her in her business. And about a year later, he had a product, and it was
That's
the
crazy.
first version of HiFloat. And for quite a while, not quite a while, but for some amount of time, she was the only person in the world that had HiFloat treated balloons. And again, they didn't market it, they didn't plan a company. People started hearing about it, and they started knocking on her door, and the company grew from there. From their basement to now we have a full production facility.
Yeah, what is the size of the company? Because I think of it as this family business because everyone I've ever met or talked to has been part of your family.
Sure.
But what's the overall size of the company?
And it is a family business for sure. We have 10 employees who are not family members,
Okay.
but they are family members. I mean, they're the first employee for HiFloat uh, mowed my parents-in-law's yard. And
Oh,
when
that's
they started the
nice.
company and it was in the garage, they said, "Hey, do you want to have a real job?" And he worked there his entire life, and
That's
retired.
amazing.
Yeah. So
How long after it started did it turn into a business? Like, how long was it just kind of this thing she was using, or then maybe it expanded to like a couple people?
yeah, it wasn't very long at all, like less than a year. I mean,
Okay.
word got out and people started knocking on their door
They
and
knew they had gold.
yeah.
Very cool. Well, how much has changed in the 40-year history in terms of the formula, the team, where it's located, or is it largely the same?
The formula has changed quite a bit. We've gone through three versions of HiFloat. So there was the original, which was called regular HiFloat. Then, which 1984, Super HiFloat came out around 1993. And then Ultra HiFloat, which is the current version, came out around 2001. And for a while, we had multiple versions out. Now, the only thing we sell is Ultra, and we're actually in the process of rebranding and just getting rid of the Ultra word. And
Gotcha.
it's just high. There's no reason to have more than one name. It's HiFloat. I mean,
So each time I'm assuming, increase the float
each time
time.
it's increased the float time and add less, increase the float time, made a better product. Yeah.
Neat, neat. And then HiShine came along. That's newer.
Right. Yeah. So I actually came up with the formula for HiShine, but I can't take credit because my brother-in-law and my wife for many, many years said, make HiShine, make a product like this. Because there was Balloon Shine from Canada was really the only product for a long time, but you had to wipe it with a glove and it was
Hmm.
very tedious to use. And I told them, nobody's going to buy this because balloon shine sales weren't that big, and it's a small product. But and I was totally wrong, because once you do away with having to wipe it, it's a very popular product, and you can see it's used everywhere now. Yeah, and so I think we introduced that. We'd spent about probably, I think, about $200,000 to make the first bottle, and we introduced it about 2 weeks before the world shut down with COVID.
Oh,
And I thought,
wow.
worst investment we've ever made in our lives. We're never going to sell this ever. But yeah,
So was it kind of stagnant over COVID, or did it grow during that anyway?
no, so our company and the industry at large, I think during COVID, the first 3 or 4 months, it looked like the worst thing ever. But then it was boom time. I mean, we had
Mm-hmm.
our best year ever in the history of the company was 2021. So,
Yeah, I think that's true
and
for a
every,
lot of
yeah,
balloon people, and a lot of people
yeah,
started during then as
right.
well.
And a lot of people came in, and yeah.
Yeah. How about since then? I know that like, even right now, it just feels like there's another there's another like business ending fiasco every other week, it feels like. But I know you were in Party Cities. I mean, my first job was at a Party City, and obviously they high float their balloons. Um, was that hard? I mean, was that hard for you guys? Like I mean, that's a nosy question, but like I would imagine they were a large part of your business.
Yeah, no, not just Party City. I mean, the industry as a whole has been through a lot of upheaval in the last, well, since COVID. Some of it potentially caused by COVID, but some of it just other factors within those
Mm-hmm.
companies. But you had arguably one of the most important balloon manufacturers in the world went through bankruptcy and has disappeared. Party City's disappeared. Probably the most important retailer for party goods, at
Right.
least in the United States, if not the world. And yeah, and all of those have been big customers of ours and been important for lots of people in the industry, and it has definitely impacted our business. I think right now, in terms of balloon supplies, with a major manufacturer going bankrupt, we've start seeing a lot of different new balloon products on the market, and that probably has to shake out. We probably have more brands. I mean, I don't know. I'm just
Oh, I
from an
totally
outside view.
agree. Right now,
Um,
there's like a surplus. There's like
right,
all
there,
this stuff
yeah,
versus in COVID, you couldn't get a white
right,
balloon to save your
right,
life. So it's
and
just,
nobody needs that many options. So it'll shake out. Some people will make it, some people won't. I think the same thing is already happening and will continue to happen with Party City. I know Michaels has started a
hmm.
helium program. Other chains will start a helium program. I can. Party City was treating. I know how many balloons Party City was treating and selling, because we sold them the HiFloat. We made the balloon transport bags that they used, so it's pretty easy to count that. They were moving a lot of latex helium filled HiFloat treated balloons out the door every year, and I think a lot of people know that, and there will be a move to capture that part of the market. So,
Yeah. Well, and I think a lot of small businesses, a lot of my size businesses
yeah,
are all of a sudden shifting into helium. Like I
yeah,
just feel like everything is cyclical. For a while, classic decor was the only thing, and then it was all organic, and now all these people are learning
right,
classic. And I think same thing with helium. It got so expensive. I think you said your mother-in-law felt guilty for selling a dozen balloons for like 20 bucks. I'm like, I sell them for like $5 each and I
yeah,
feel guilty. But I feel like there are a lot of people coming into helium because people still want it.
right.
People
Yeah,
still
when
will pay it.
I started at HiFloat in 2000, and I mean, if you went to an educational event, they were going to be teaching helium filled balloons. Um, Now, in the past few years, that has gone away, and mainly because of the helium crisis and the prices and the lack of supply of helium, people just started teaching air-filled decor, and I think a lot of that was actually led by Qualitex before
Hmm.
they went bankrupt. And so, a lot of these new people that started out in the industry during COVID, decorators, never grew up, using helium, and they weren't taught how to use helium. And I think that will come back now. That there's definitely plenty of supply of helium. Price kind of is still much higher than it was 10 or 15 years ago, but that's kind of with everything. But I mean, Party City showed people will pay for helium filled balloons.
Yeah.
There is no doubt about that. There is a market for it. So,
Yeah. And if they can't get them at the bargain rate that was Party City,
right.
they're still gonna want them. Like I think it's people just expect balloons to float, and I don't make a ton of money off of my helium because I pay a lot. I don't know. I'm in the area in the country where it's so expensive.
Yeah.
But I think to not have helium and be a balloon company, it's a hard sell for me. Like people just expect you to have it. So as long as people are willing to pay, it's
Yeah.
it's worth having, I think.
Yeah. I mean, the
Um,
helium, the helium for an 11-inch balloon is basically $1. Uh, I mean, it depends a little bit on parts of the country, but that's
Mm-hmm.
basically what it is. But that's just part of the cost, and you factor it in, and you have to charge for it. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's take a quick break, and then if you wouldn't mind, would you give us some tips and tricks, either about helium or high float?
Sure.
All right, we'll be right back. If you haven't checked out Having a Party yet, now is the time. The great team over at Having a Party Wholesale carries a huge selection of high quality balloons and supplies to take your designs to the next level, including HiFloat, this month's sponsor. Plus, they're more than just a supplier. They're committed to education, helping balloon professionals grow their skills and businesses, and investing in our industry. And here's something extra. Get 5% off orders over $200 using the code podcast at checkout. Don't miss out on the latest and greatest in balloons. Shop now at havingaparty.com and keep creating with the best supplies in the industry. All right, welcome back. I'm putting you on the spot here. But I watched a great live class that HiFloat presented. And I think for a lot of us that have been doing helium for a while, we're like, oh my gosh, we didn't know these things or we didn't know these tips. So let's start with HiFloat. What are some of the areas we're screwing up? Like, where do you see balloon decorators not doing it correctly?
Sure. So I will tell you the number one complaint we get about HiFloat is around March or April. We'll start getting phone calls from people, and they'll tell us their bottle of HiFloat has gone bad and
Huh.
doesn't work anymore. And the bottle of HiFloat has not gone bad, but that is how they present it. And to understand why that happens, you have to understand a little bit about the science of HiFloat. HiFloat is water based, so it's just basically a polymer dissolved in water. But when it is wet and when it has water in it, it doesn't do a good job of keeping the helium from escaping from balloons. So
Okay.
after you add HiFloat to a balloon, rub it, inflate it, you've got a coating on the balloon that's wet. It takes an hour or two for the water to evaporate and escape from the balloon and leave a dry coating. Once you have a dry coating, it does a great job preventing helium from escaping. But it depends on the kind of weather you have outside as to how dry that coating will get. So in the wintertime, the absolute humidity outside is incredibly low. It's really dry. So that HiFloat coating gets really, really dry. So I will guarantee you an 11-inch balloon that I treat with HiFloat in the winter will float for a month. There is
Huh.
no way it will not float for a month. Probably 2, 3 months. It'll be there forever. In the summer, it's much more humid. So there's a lot more water in the air. So the coating never gets as dry. So it doesn't do as good a job of keeping the helium from escaping. So if I get a week in the summer, I'm happy with that. It might even be a couple of days shorter, but it's not going to be anything like the winter where they float forever. So what people will do though, and a lot of this comes back to education, they will use less HiFloat than we recommend. And in the winter, but looking to save money, even though the HiFloat is minimal cost compared to the helium inside a balloon, and they will add less HiFloat than we recommend. In the wintertime, that thinner coating will be fine because it's
Hmm.
really dry and you'll get 2 or 3 weeks of float time, and nobody needs them to float longer than that, so everyone's happy. But then as it gets warmer and warmer and starts to get more humid around March or April, they're using much less than's recommended. And because the coating doesn't uh, get as dry and it's not as thick because you haven't added enough HiFloat, the balloons don't float as long. And so they start
Okay.
to get 2 days float time when they were getting 3 weeks, and they call
Yeah.
us and complain that their bottle isn't good. So,
Interesting. I mean, I
so
would still argue like 2 days for a balloon. It's like when,
sure,
what type of party are people celebrating here that they need balloons for
right.
weeks and
Well,
months?
yeah. I mean, I think the big selling point of HiFloat is that you can decorate the day before the event.
Yeah.
That's going to be floating at the end of the event. You're right. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. I have two more questions that popped into my head when you were talking about this. Can we talk about the clips?
Sure.
There is kind of this myth out there that like the clips tell you to put too much high float in. You should just use an itty bitty
Yep.
teeny bit. And I think you just touched on that. Like it'll work, but not in all conditions. Like the clips are the size they are for a reason.
Yeah, the clips are the size they are for a reason, so that they'll give you the best float time possible under all conditions. Yeah, if I know what I'm doing. If I had a balloon business and it was December, I'd probably add less, save
Yeah.
me a little bit of money. But once it starts to get, I'd say March through September, October, where we live, you really need to add the full amount. You need to know how to add the full amount. And if you add the full amount, you also have to fully inflate the balloons. They have to,
Okay.
11-inch balloon has to be inflated to an 11 inches for you to get good buoyancy. So
Gotcha. Because of the extra weight there.
extra
Okay.
weight is.
And then my other question was about this was a tip that I got from Tommy DeLorenzo. And it's about the humidity that you were talking about, and it never occurred to me. And he was like, you need to crank your dehumidifier all day, every day. He said, like, make it as dry as possible. So does that help if you're talking about the humidity not allowing that coating to dry in the summer months? Does a dehumidifier work in a shop?
Sure. So a dehumidifier will help. I will say that just running an air conditioner was for me is good enough. Just
Oh,
running
interesting. Okay.
you'll get, you've got to, it has to be climate controlled though. It has to, the air conditioner needs to be running. But a dehumidifier would be even better. But the balloons are going to float if you have an air conditioner and you follow the directions, use the full amount for close to a week anyway. If you want them to float longer than that, yeah. But I will caution, yeah, use a dehumidifier. But I will caution you that once those balloons leave your shop, you can't control the humidity. So
Yeah.
the customer takes them to their house where they're not running the air conditioner and it's rainy and warm. Water is going to go right back in from the air into the high float coating and make it wet again. So it's
Interesting.
not just where
Okay.
the balloons were inflated, it matters where they're stored and kept as well.
Interesting. Okay, cool. Um, Two more questions, rapid fire. So then this is more of a rhetorical, but I'm connecting the dots in my head. That's why the high float bags are important. That's why you designed those.
Yep, for sure. So, and the high float bags are transport bags. They're not storage bags
Okay.
because if you put a wet high float treated balloon inside a bag that is sealed, then the water can't escape. It's stuck in that balloon, so the coating never dries. So the high float transport bags are ventilated. So they have tons of little holes in them. You get airflow, you get circulation, so the water that evaporates can escape. Um, but even if you left them in those bags that have holes in there, the balloons for a day or two, you're going to slow down the rate of drying. So what we tell people is, they're transport bags. If they're in there for an hour, you're fine. But once you get them home, take them out of the bag.
Okay. You know what? They told me to say that at Party City, which when I started working at Party City, I had like zero training. They were just like, here's the cash register and here's the helium tanks. Good luck. I had no idea what I was doing. But one of the things I remember is they did always say to tell customers to take them out of the bags when they got home. And I never knew why, but I always just told them that. And I still
Yep.
always just tell them that. And I never really got it.
Yeah, I would also tell you when we started making the bags for Party City, they were getting them from a different source and they didn't have ventilation holes. And they agreed to buy them from us. And I worked for 2 years on that to get them to switch, but they didn't want the ventilation holes. They just
Huh.
would not, and I just had to, had to
Why?
because they weren't lit because they didn't have holes before. They didn't want to change. They wanted the exact same product. But eventually we educated them and they, had the ventilation holes, which you need if you're going to use high flow.
That's really interesting. Cool. And then my last question is about 60/40. That is where I think, things can kind of go haywire. I don't have problems when I do 100% helium, but saving 40% on your helium is really appealing these days. So if someone's listening who doesn't know, there's like a special inflator that you can get, like a valve, and it basically thins the helium with air, and I wouldn't recommend it unless you're using high float because then you're going to get like a 2 hour float time or something ridiculous. But with high float, it should be okay, right?
Yeah. And if personally, I really like the way balloons that are treated with high float and inflated using a 60% helium mix look. Let me back up and say, if you want to be successful with this, you're going to have to add a little less high float because you have less buoyancy.
Okay.
So the balloons aren't going to float as long, but an 11-inch balloon is still going to float for 2 or 3 days in the summer and a couple of weeks in the wintertime,
Yeah.
which is usually all you want anyway. Um, but the thing I like about it is normally when a high float treated balloon with pure helium, the helium is escaping at some rate. And so eventually, after a week or so in the summer, the balloon will get. I'm not used to a podcast, Sarah. I'm here, my hands are the balloon. And I realize your listeners won't be able to see that. But eventually, the balloon will get smaller and smaller and smaller, and you can see, the balloon looks like it's about ready to die before it drops. With a 60/40 mix, though, because you've got so much air in there, the balloons don't really get that much visibly smaller. So they
Okay.
maintain the same initial size as when they're inflated, and they look like they're brand new. And then one day they just drop to the ground.
Okay,
But you,
interesting. Because I actually did a test. Because again, people love to debate. Like, Tommy swore that 60/40 with high float lasted longer than 100% helium
it does not.
with high float. He was like, this is the way to do it. But what I did notice is that, yes, the 100% lasted longer. But like you were saying, it looked sad and pathetic. So it was like, well, who really cares if that thing's still
Right.
floating because it
Right.
looks like a little, But then the 60/40, like you said, it was still pretty big, and then one day it was just on the
Right.
ground. So
And
that's molecule size of the air and the helium.
yeah, that's just the air is much bigger molecule. Oxygen and nitrogen are bigger than helium, so they don't escape from the high float coating nearly as fast as the helium does.
Very cool. Yeah. Well, I mean, I love 60/40. I think it's like the best hack out there. You spend $100 on this inflator, and then you
Yeah,
get
and
so much more helium.
I mean,
It's
instead of 60 cents for to inflate an 11-inch balloon, or sorry, instead of $1 to inflate an 11-inch balloon, you're spending 60 cents. I mean, it's
yeah,
a significant savings. So
absolutely, absolutely. And then before we take our last break, do you have any tips of how people are screwing up high shine? I mean, I think it's pretty obvious,
yeah,
but like, what are people doing wrong?
yeah. Well, they're doing what I did wrong the first time we came out with it. We introduced it at a show in Nuremberg, Germany, called the Toy Fair, which is the biggest international show for us, and had a decorator build a wall for us of air filled balloons. And I came in and sprayed with the high shine, which even though I had developed it, I didn't really know how to use. And I just sprayed and sprayed and sprayed and drenched that thing, and it was dripping and it was slippery everywhere. And so, really, the key takeaway that I would give people is use less. So when
Okay.
you spray, whether it's with the aerosol or with the original water-based pump dispenser, you want to just go really quickly over your balloon sculpture. And especially the first time you do it, use less than you think you need.
Okay.
It will spread. You don't need to spray every area, cover every part of the balloon. It's going to spread naturally. That's why you don't need to use a glove to
Interesting.
wipe it. And also put down a drop cloth underneath the balloons so that if you do have any overspray or any dripping, it doesn't make your carpet or your floor slippery. Then come back, in 30 minutes or an hour, and you may miss a spot. If you miss a spot, just touch it up really quickly. But you'll save a lot of, I mean, high shine products in general are expensive. You'll save money on the amount of the high shine you use, but also you'll have a better product because it won't be wet and slippery, and you won't have as big of a mess to worry about. So
Yeah.
definitely use less. I
Yeah.
tell people use more high float than you think, use less high shine than you think.
Yeah, great. I've never heard that actually. So I have definitely been guilty of like dousing every
Yeah.
every square
If you
inch.
can see like, little bits running or dripping, you've added way too much. You don't need that much.
Wow. Okay. Very cool. And then the aerosol is newer. Which one do you prefer? The hand spray or the aerosol?
So I will say that the aerosol is easier to use and faster. And when we came out with it, I really thought it would probably take over the market and kill the original product. We still sell more of the original water-based with the trigger sprayer.
Hmm.
Um, the advantages to the water-based formula are a lot of people don't like an aerosol because of environmental concerns. But also, if you're outside, especially, the aerosol has a very fine mist, and the air or the wind can blow that mist away. And so you'll lose a lot of product that won't get on your balloons. Whereas the water-based product in the pump dispenser is a much heavier droplet, so it makes it to the balloon. So there
Yeah.
are advantages and disadvantages to both of them.
Cool, cool. And then one other thing that I think I know, but I don't know, so I'm letting you speak to this. Can you just talk about, you talked about environmental, but can you talk about like toxicity? Like all this stuff is okay for you, right?
Yeah. So high float is, I don't want to encourage people to knock us off, but it's almost the exact same product that is on the back of postage stamps that you lick.
Oh, okay.
It's that glue. I mean, high float is a glue. That's why it can make, kind of a sticky mess if you pop a balloon. It's a glue. It's also used in artificial tears. So,
Oh,
and it's also used in artificial blood that they use in transfusions. The same basic chemicals are used in that. So it's the molecules that are used in high float are used in a wide range of applications that are entirely safe. It's also biodegradable. We have independent third-party testing that shows it's biodegradable, and it's actually to get something labeled as biodegradable by the current standards is actually hard to do.
yeah.
The standard is high to be called biodegradable, but high float is biodegradable. High shine is non-toxic as well. It is, and we have to know this up front before you use it. It is a slip hazard though,
Hmm.
because it is slippery. So that's the biggest concern with high shine.
But breathing it in isn't going to hurt you.
And it will not hurt you. And although I would also minimize that, but it's not a health hazard. But also the advantage to high shine over some other products is there's no fragrance, no odor. that
Yeah.
I know some people complain about. Yeah.
Perfect. Well, cool. Oh my gosh, I've learned so much. I love this. I think it's so great. Let's take one more break and then we're going to end on some fun questions that don't have much to do about business.
Okay, sounds good.
Hey friends, quick question. Do you ever feel like you're winging it when it comes to client inquiries? Or maybe they book once and you're just hoping they come back next year? That's exactly why I created Stay Booked, a new course that teaches my complete plug and play system to help you book clients quickly and, most importantly, get them coming back year after year. I'll show you how to build a little internal sales machine that generates consistent and easy sales annually. This has become the backbone to my balloon business. You'll get email templates, an annual tracking strategy, my full booking and rebooking workflows, and more. This is like putting a little GPS tracker on every single client so you always know where they are in your process and what step comes next. You'll never lose track of a client again or waste energy thinking about what you should be doing. This is a simple, tech-free solution for getting consistent annual sales, and it's only $27. So what do you have to lose? Grab it now in the link in the show notes so this year you can stay booked. All right, welcome back. Let's end on our final three questions. The first is, where is your favorite place to go on vacation?
Oh, wow. Yeah. So I will say, to almost avoid the question, but the neatest thing about, but I will answer the question, but the neatest thing about working in this industry is that I get to travel so much
Mm,
to so many different parts of the world. I just got back from Amsterdam. I was in Nuremberg in Germany before that. I was in California this year. And you meet people and you get to have relationships with people from all over the world, and that is the my favorite part of this industry. So I travel a lot. If I'm just going for vacation, though, I think my favorite spot is Rome.
okay.
For some reason, I love going to Rome.
Do you ever get to go as a family or is someone always working?
No, so the last time we were in Italy was a family vacation that my wife and I took our three kids who are now also working in the business to extend the family thing, but it was just a family vacation. We did, I think, 10 days in Italy.
Cool. Oh, sounds wonderful. The next question, because I like to shop, I like to buy things. What is something that you've purchased recently that you are enjoying?
So my favorite thing that I've purchased in the last year is my little puppy German short-haired pointer. I got her in September, and so she's about 10 months old now,
Okay.
and she fills up. If you've ever had a German short-haired pointer, you know that they are attention hounds, and she pretty much fills up my life. But she's very well trained, which takes a lot of work, and she is very much my dog. She goes to work with me every day.
Oh, what's her name?
But her name is Isabella.
Cute.
Yeah,
Cute.
she is the warehouse dog. She walks through the warehouse with me and stays by my side, and is,
Oh, that's so
she works
nice.
as hard as I do.
Oh, that's really cute. Well, our last question to end on is what is a small tip of business advice that you'd give listeners?
Yeah, especially to if you're a decorator or you have a small business you just started, is to really do what I call a mill cost. And that means understand exactly what everything you're using to make a product costs,
Hmm,
have it written down, have a total sum of everything you use costs. Like I know how much we supply bottled water for our employees. I know how much that costs. It is
really?
factored into how much we charge for HiFloat. Every single thing that you spend money on has to be factored in. And then you take your expenses and you get yourself a reasonable profit so that you can make money so that your business can thrive.
Oh,
And
Philip, you'd come here and you'd have a heart attack if you saw how I ran my business on vibes and whimsy.
no, I mean, it can work that way, but if you know exactly how much you're spending and exactly how much you're making, I think you have a better chance of having a success.
Absolutely. Oh, that's really interesting. Where did you learn that or make that something that you stand by just over time?
I mean, when I came into the business, my father-in-law was already doing that, but we're both we both have scientific backgrounds and numbers backgrounds. So I mean, it's kind of just second nature that you're going to do that.
And I'm curious, how does a business the size of yours, like, where does that information go? Are you like keeping a spreadsheet? Do you have a notebook? Do you
It is a very
have
big, it's a very big spreadsheet. Yeah.
interesting? Oh, cool. I love that. Is there anything maybe in your business, but I think bottled water is such an interesting thing that would never register. Do you think there's something that like people wouldn't typically think to keep track of that you're like, that adds up. Like you need to pay attention.
I mean, I don't know what you wouldn't think of, but it's everything. I mean, it's postage stamps. We don't use postage that much, but we still do spend money at the post office. That gets factored in. Your heating and air conditioning bill, every single thing. Yeah.
And then that's how you come down to your cost of your product. That's
Right.
amazing.
Mm-hmm.
Very cool. Well, thank you so much for taking the time and thank you to HiFloat for sponsoring this month. I'm so excited for all of our other guests and it was so great to talk to you.
Thanks, Sarah. It's been wonderful. You've made me feel really welcome.
Yeah. We'll talk to you soon.
Okay. Thanks.
Thanks for listening. As usual, I tried to keep it bright and light. Our presenting sponsor is 17 Hats, the CRM I use to cut the chaos and manage my entire balloon business. From the lead capture form on my website to workflows and email templates, invoicing and grab-and-go garland automated bookings, it's all powered by 17 Hats, the best customer relationship management system for balloon businesses. There's even a 50% off coupon code waiting for you in the show notes wherever you're listening. I'll see you next week in another episode.